Hello friends, today I bring you a video where we will review all the defeats of Baki Hanma, the son of the strongest creature on Earth. Because even though Baki became the strongest man in the world, you'll be surprised how many times he was defeated by his opponents. So in this video, we'll go over those fights where Baki couldn't come out on top because, as crazy as it sounds, Baki hasn't always been the invincible man he is today. And hey, remember you can drop your suggestions for future videos in the comment box. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this video. The first time we saw Baki in the animated series was when he was just 13 years old. On that occasion, we saw him fighting against a large group of gang members. At first, it seemed so random to see Baki get into a fight with these guys for no apparent reason. The boy showed up at the gang meeting and, without saying a word, lunged at one of the leaders and started attacking him until he took him down. Then he did the same with another guy, and that was enough for the rest of the criminals to pounce on him. It is impressive that Baki managed to defeat almost half of all these men, some of whom even had baseball bats. Unfortunately, in the end, Baki was overwhelmed by the remaining criminals and was eventually defeated. Even though he took out several gang members, I'm counting this as his first defeat for this video since he ended up unconscious in the end. Luckily for Baki, there was a cop nearby who saved his life by scaring away the criminals. The funny thing was, when Baki woke up, the first thing he did was punch this guy, thinking he was still in the middle of the fight. I can't remember why Baki decided to pick a fight with all those guys. Maybe he had an argument with his mother or something like that. Either way, if that guy hadn't stepped in to help Baki, the series probably would have lasted just one episode. The funny thing is that currently Baki already has enough power to defeat an entire army. Let's remember that Yujiro defeated the United States when he was only 16 years old, and Baki already surpassed that level of power a long time ago. Tired of training in the gyms that his mother had paid for, Baki decides to train on his own and goes in search of strong opponents. After some reflection, Baki chose to go to a gym where a group of boxers trained. Among all those guys, one caught his eye. That was Yuri, and he appeared to be the strongest in the gym. Yuri was in the middle of the ring, effortlessly defeating any man who tried to fight him. Baki saw him and thought it would be a good idea to test his skills against such an experienced boxer. So he stepped into the ring and challenged Yuri to a match. The boxer laughed at the boy, but accepted his challenge and put on his gloves. At first, Baki couldn't land a single punch as Yuri dodged with ease. In fact, Baki was nearly knocked out twice but managed to continue the fight. After a couple of hits, Baki surprised Yuri with his speed and landed several punches on the boxer. Baki planned to end the fight with a final blow, but just as he was about to launch that attack, he was surprised by a powerful blow from Yuri, which was enough to end the fight. Well, it was to be expected. Baki ventured into enemy territory thinking he could beat a professional boxer in his own martial art. Baki had zero boxing knowledge and thought it was just about putting on gloves and throwing punches as he always does. This was a mistake that Retsu also made when he fought against Smoking Joe and nearly lost because of overconfidence. But hey, he was a 13-year-old Baki, so we can forgive him that defeat. As part of his training, Baki decides to train in the mountains. There he meets Ando, an old friend of his. Ando feeds Baki and offers him his house to stay as long as he needs while he trains. During this time, Ando tells Baki about a creature that lives in the mountains. This wild and very powerful monster was known as Yasha. Ando seems to fear this monster, but Baki is excited to meet and fight him. One night, while Baki is training, the monster appears in front of him. Baki was perplexed when he saw the creature and could not even speak due to the fear he felt. That creature was over 2 meters tall and had huge fangs. It was as if Bigfoot had gone to the gym. It was at that moment that Ando appeared and confronted the creature in an attempt to get it away from the boy. Unfortunately, Yasha was too strong and severely injured Ando. Baki tried to help but was knocked out with a single blow, proving he couldn't beat the monster. There was only a brief exchange of blows, but I'll count this as a defeat for Baki since, after receiving Yasha's first punch, he chose not to engage in hand-to-hand combat. In the end, Baki managed to drive the creature away using some fire, but did not defeat it in a hand-to-hand fight. After training for several days and undergoing intense mental preparation, Baki decided to seek a rematch against the creature. In this fight, Baki nearly lost again, but somehow managed to defeat the beast. After the battle, Baki earned Yasha's respect and chose to leave the mountains to return to the city. On another occasion, Baki faced Hanma'S in a tough fight from which he emerged victorious. However, at the end of the fight, his father, Yujiro, appeared and, almost laughing, gave both of them a beating. I don't count this as a defeat since Baki was very weak after the fight he had just moments before. However, I feel I should mention it since Yujiro is the guy who has defeated Baki the most times throughout the series. Baki's fourth defeat came at the hands of his father, Yujiro. This was the fight that had been brewing throughout the first season of the Baki series. The young fighter went to the mountains to battle the beast Yasha, and after a tough fight, he'd managed to defeat him. Baki also ventured into a dangerous jungle where he faced a group of elite mercenaries. It was a tough challenge, but in the end, he overcame them all. After that, the day where he would face his father finally arrived. This moment was eagerly anticipated by both him and his mother Emi, who had supervised his training since he was a child. Yujiro had warned Emi that if Baki did not meet his expectations, she would cease to exist for him. Hanma'S and several others were present, cheering Baki on in this battle. Although the young fighter had made great progress after his rigorous training, he could not match his father's prowess. Yujiro practically played with him during this brief confrontation. However, the ogre saw great progress in his son and thanked Emi for training him well. At the end of the fight, Baki tried to deliver a powerful attack to Yujiro, but it was useless, and he was defeated. In any case, we could not expect much from Baki, as he was only 13 years old at the time, and his opponent was known as the strongest creature on Earth. In fact, during this fight, Yujiro performed one of the most insane feats of strength in the Baki universe. He managed to stop an earthquake with a single punch. This fight was a turning point for Baki, as it was during this fight that he sought his mother for the last time. And the worst thing is that he did not hear what she was asking for his forgiveness. After this event, the series had a time skip, and we could see the character development of the young Baki, since, after his defeat, he decided to leave Tokyo and went to travel the world to become stronger. Baki's next defeat occurred a couple of years after his fight with Yujiro. Baki had returned from his training, and during that time abroad, he traveled to countries like Brazil where he learned new fighting styles and martial arts techniques. When Baki returned to Japan, he heard about a tournament where some of the world's strongest fighters gathered. It was an underground tournament, which meant that the rules didn't matter. But despite this, Baki managed to enter after asking Mitsunari, the owner of the arena, for a chance. In one of the tournament rounds, Baki had to face Zulu, a fighter of Afro-Brazilian origin. Baki was very confident going up against this man who was much bigger and heavier than him. Zulu was extremely aggressive and seemed to lack reasoning. In his mind, there was only the desire to fight. The match was about to start, but before Baki could get into a fighting stance, Zulu surprised him with a sort of suplex. The boy couldn't react and was slammed hard to the ground. Zulu began to attack relentlessly, and Baki couldn't even make a move as the referee quickly stopped the fight. Mitsunari came down to the fighting arena and confirmed Baki's defeat. Everyone was shocked because no one expected to see Yujiro's son beaten like that. Even the ogre looked notably disappointed. Baki had already accepted his defeat, but Zulu was out of control and came back to attack. This man wanted to keep fighting even though he had already won the match. Seeing this, Mitsunari decided to restart the match and gave Baki another chance. This time, Baki attacked with full force from the start, and after a tough fight, he managed to defeat Zulu. Perhaps his defeat was due to the fact that he was expecting a more technical fight, and did not anticipate facing such a savage fighting style as Zulu. Regardless, this was a lesson in humility for Baki, one of the many lessons he received throughout the series, because believe it or not, Baki continued to make the mistake of underestimating his opponent on several more occasions. In this tournament, there are other moments when Yujiro beats up Baki as usual. For example, when Jack challenged Yujiro, Baki stepped into the arena and stood between the two. Baki hated Yujiro, but he wasn't going to let Jack fight the ogre for him. Yujiro was so annoyed by this that he sent Baki flying with a single blow, telling him not to interfere in his business. At that time, Yujiro also had a disciple he had brought to the tournament, so we could say Baki was somewhat jealous of this situation. On another occasion, Baki fought Toba in a tough match, and eventually emerged as the winner. However, Yujiro was bored watching his son's performance, so he stepped into the arena and knocked Baki out with just one finger. Well, it's fair to say Baki was easily knocked out because he had expended a lot of energy fighting Toba. Later on, another clash between Baki and his father almost took place. A very controversial situation arose, and in the end, they didn't fight. It was not an official match, as neither of the two had any intention of fighting at the time. However, the encounter with Spec appears in this list because on that occasion, Baki was defeated without even realizing it. Spec was one of the 5 men who had escaped from prison and had come to Tokyo seeking defeat. The criminal met Baki outside of the school and extended his hand as a sign of respect. Baki agreed to shake his hand, but unfortunately, this was a trap, and Spec seized the moment to repeatedly attack Baki. Baki couldn't defend himself and likened Spec's presence to that of Yujiro. The sensation from Spec's blows was the same as he had felt years earlier when he faced Yujiro. Spec mocked Baki when he saw that he did not defend himself. The criminal had heard that he was the strongest boy in the world, but was disappointed to see that he did nothing to dodge his attacks. Luckily for Baki, the police arrived at that moment, and Spec agreed to leave peacefully. It would have been interesting to see these two in another fight where they both fought seriously. In fact, they came close to fighting on that occasion when Spec found Baki taking a walk with his girlfriend in a park. The criminal was ready to start a fight there, but Hanayama stopped him and took him away to fight him. Baki was in the middle of his class. It was a normal day like any other. However, at that moment, Hector Doyle burst into the classroom and challenged Baki to a fight. It's worth noting that the night before, the criminals went to the underground arena and agreed to fight against Baki and his friends anytime, anywhere. The criminal entered the school without caring if Baki was in class or not. Due to the agreement in the underground arena, fights could happen anywhere. Baki did not want to involve his classmates and jumped out the window to escape from Doyle. To his bad luck outside, he ran into Yanagi, another of the escaped convicts from the prison. Yanagi was also eager to confront Baki, so he challenged him outside the school. The criminal had dangerous weapons, while Baki was going to fight with bare fists. The boy did everything he could to avoid getting hit by the criminal's weapons. In the midst of the fight, Goki Shibukagawa showed up to help Baki. Unfortunately, even in a 2 versus 1 fight, they couldn't defeat the criminal, and he ended up knocking out Baki after attacking him with his vacuum palm technique. I really expected more from Baki in this fight. However, his opponent was one of the dirtiest fighters in the series, so we forgive him this time. I wonder if the outcome would have been the same if Baki had faced Doyle. Remember, this character also used dirty tricks like hidden weapons throughout his body. However, his defeat against Yanagi is on this list, because, even with help, he was unable to beat him. The prehistoric caveman Pickle had been brought back to life after being frozen underground for millions of years. Pickle lived during the dinosaur era, and to many people's surprise, he was the natural predator of giant beasts like the T-Rex. After Pickle was revived by a group of scientists, the world watched in anticipation. Among them were fighters from the underground arena who couldn't hide their excitement to meet this primitive man. After being held captive for a while, the caveman took a stroll through the city of Tokyo. There he encountered Hanayama, who confronted him for a few moments. However, his goal wasn't to fight Pickle. He was doing this to give Baki time to arrive. Baki had asked Hanayama for this favor because he wanted to be among the first to face the cavemen. Somehow, Pickle and Baki ended up in the underground arena. Pickle's intention was to fight there, as he considered that place his home. Mitsunari had agreed to the match, and with Hanayama also present, it was said to be an official fight. However, while Baki was giving a speech, the caveman caught him off guard and hit him with a powerful kick, sending him flying several meters. Baki fell unconscious in the stands of the Colosseum, ending the fight before it had even begun. Pickle started dancing after defeating Baki. In fact, it looked like he was mocking him. Baki's mistake was thinking that Pickle would follow the current world's fighting rules, and started speaking as if the primitive man could understand him. The caveman was used to fighting at any time. He always had to be alert, even in his sleep, from predators wanting to hunt him. For him, attacking Baki like that was normal since in his time there were no rules, and he never followed a code like modern-day fighters. The truth is, this humiliating defeat taught Baki that fights don't start when both fighters are ready. A fight can start even if one of them is sleeping. Baki's next defeat came shortly after the previous one and in fact was again against Pickle. The caveman had just defeated Retsu Katsumi and Jack Hanma. By now, Pickle had established himself as one of the strongest fighters in the series. Baki was upset that the other fighters had faced Pickle before him, so to make sure he was next, he stayed in the underground arena to keep a close eye on Pickle. Baki waited for quite a while, hoping Pickle would be in the mood to fight. However, the caveman seemed tired of fighting. He just wanted to eat and rest from that point on. Baki wasn't willing to wait any longer, so he walked over to where Pickle was sitting and began provoking him to awaken his fighting instinct. Baki gently touched the caveman's cheek, and that was enough to anger him. The primitive man also had a fighter's pride, and this action offended him. And while the fight started at that moment, and Baki took control from the very first moment. Despite the massive difference in size and strength, Baki managed to dominate Pickle for most of the fight. Baki's dominance wasn't due to his physical strength. It was all thanks to his mastery of martial arts and his incredible agility. For the first time in millions of years, Pickle began to feel frustrated. Not even the biggest beasts he had ever faced had put him in such a difficult situation. And towards the end of the fight, Baki decided to face Pickle using only brute strength. This was the same tactic he used in his match against Oliva Biscuit. Surprisingly, the caveman did something that shocked us all. For the first time, he used a technique in the fight. Pickle grabbed Baki's arm and slammed him to the ground with all his strength. This attack was decisive and Baki was defeated once again by the prehistoric caveman. Even though Baki practically dominated Pickle this time, he became overconfident and didn't anticipate that the caveman would choose to use a martial arts technique. Baki assumed Pickle would continue fighting with brute force, and this mistake cost him the victory. What's interesting about this fight is that, this time, Pickle wasn't fighting for survival. For the first time, the primitive man was fighting to defend his fighter's pride, fighting purely for the pleasure of winning. After battling the prehistoric caveman, Baki finally decided to face his father, Yujiro Hanma. Baki invited Yujiro over for dinner at his place, and he accepted the invitation. The dinner went off without a hitch. In fact, it went much better than Baki had anticipated, as his father even gave him some dietary advice. At the end of the meal, Baki and Yujiro played the classic rock-paper-scissors game to decide who would wash the dishes. Baki won, but Yujiro wasn't about to accept that outcome. He forced his son to lose, and in the end, it was Baki who did the dishes. The thing is, Yujiro also invited Baki to dinner, and asked him to meet at a luxurious hotel in the city. The dinner was going well for the most part, but things took a turn when Baki asked Yujiro why he took his mother away that night. Yujiro became furious, and warned Baki to watch his words. However, the young man wasn't scared at all. Baki even had the audacity to grab his father by the throat, demanding an answer. It was at this moment that Yujiro reached the end of his patience and decided to start the fight. And while this is possibly the best fight in the entire series, Baki and Yujiro pushed their abilities to the limit. For the first time in his life, Yujiro was thrilled that someone could give him a fight of such caliber. No one had ever been able to keep up with him for so long, and the best part was that the first to do so was his own son. This fight is filled with symbolism, and every action taken by Baki and Yujiro carries significant narrative weight. At one point in the battle, Yujiro managed to make Baki cry by telling him he was proud of him. Baki also joked around with his father, and while being used as a towel, the boy managed to craft a small toy which he gifted to Yujiro. The fight was spectacular, and even though Baki put up a good fight in the end, he couldn't go on and his body simply collapsed. Yujiro declared him the strongest man in the world, but Baki accepted his defeat. By the end of the night, they both shook hands as a sign of respect. Unlike his first fight with Yujiro, in this fight, Baki finally let out all the feelings he had bottled up and expressed them the best way he knows how, with his fists. Yujiro also showed that he has a loving father side. The ogre knows how to love, but he does it in his own way. I think we can say that this was Baki's most honorable defeat, as he finally earned the respect and admiration of the strongest creature on Earth. Baki's last known defeat occurred at the hands of the legendary swordsman Musashi Miyamoto. On that occasion, Baki had gone to Old Man Mitsunari's mission to talk with him. They chatted for a bit, and Mitsunari told Baki that a few days earlier, Hanma had challenged Yujiro to a fight, but was defeated with a single punch. As their conversation continued, Baki couldn't help but ask the elder about the person in the next room. Only a wall separated them, but for a while, the young man had felt a tremendous energy emanating from that room. Baki began to tremble with excitement upon sensing that imposing presence, which grew more pronounced. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared behind him, making him jump from his seat. Musashi was there, but without malicious intent. In fact, his face was very calm, but Baki still felt intimidated. Baki immediately recognized him as Musashi Miyamoto, so without wasting any time, both fighters stepped outside the house. Without having to discuss it, both knew they needed to fight right there. Baki was the first to move, lunging forward with the intent of landing a kick. But to the young man's surprise, Musashi moved even faster, grabbing his foot before the kick could reach him. The swordsman grabbed Baki's foot, and with all his strength, slammed it to the ground, knocking Baki unconscious, and thus the boy instantly lost the fight. The young man was brought inside the house, and Musashi stayed outside to talk with Mitsunari, while they waited for Baki to wake up. After 30 minutes, Baki finally woke up and quickly went to look for Musashi. The swordsman told Baki that during the time he was unconscious, he could have given him a final attack, but he chose not to. Hearing this, Baki accepted his defeat. He was embarrassed to ask for a rematch, but in the end, he managed to convince Musashi to fight him again. Without saying a word, Baki attacked and managed to hit Musashi with a powerful jab straight to the chin. The swordsman didn't see the punch coming and fell to the ground. He was unconscious for a couple of seconds, but managed to get up quickly. Baki told him that during those brief seconds on the ground, he too could have delivered the final attack, but he didn't. Musashi conceded to Baki and accepted the defeat, but he told the young fighter that this was just a game and that it was time to get serious. The swordsman wanted to settle things with a third match. Baki agreed and took a fighting stance, ready to attack once more. Baki managed to land a punch that sent Musashi flying up to the house's ceiling, but the swordsman had already made his move before Baki could touch him. Musashi attacked Baki with his imaginary sword technique, an attack Baki wasn't familiar with, so a couple of imaginary cuts were enough to defeat him once again. Baki essentially lost to Musashi twice on that occasion. Of course, they faced each other again later, but that bout remained unresolved because someone else interrupted the fight, and we never knew if Baki could have beaten Musashi in an official fight. Anyway, these are the losses Baki has suffered throughout the series, or at least the ones I could tally up. If you think I missed any, feel free to mention them in the comments section. For now, that's all. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you'd like a video discussing all of Baki Hanma's victories. For now, that's all, but I'll see you in a future video. Take care, and remember to exercise. And well, friends, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it. I hope you have a nice day or night. See you soon.